Welcome to Two Truths, where we explore controversial topics in religion, philosophy, and history from at least two different perspectives. I'm Dr. Darren Yamarino, and today I'm going to be talking about a top 5 list of the greatest goddesses. So let's dive in, and in no particular order really here. All 5 are great. Number 1, Athena / Minerva, right? So with some of these goddesses, right, you've got maybe your Greek and Roman counterpart or parallel. So Athena, I'm sure everyone knows, is related to Athens, right? That makes perfect sense. But you may not be aware that she is Zeus's favorite daughter, and for good reason. Pretty much seems like there's almost nothing she can't do well, from wisdom or good counsel, war, filling people with courage, teaching humanity about a whole host of things, whether it's different sort of like arts and crafts, shipbuilding even. So you can see how she would be extremely popular, and she is much loved in Athens, to the extent that they're going to build very impressive, right, temple in her honor. And in some ways that almost leads to partially their downfall, because they make some of that with not really all of their money, which is going to piss off Sparta and others. So, regardless of that, a little historical side note, she's an extremely powerful, extremely popular goddess. Always has been. Especially though associated with this combo of like wisdom and war, I guess you could say warcraft, right? Skills. A symbol that's also associated with her is the owl. More commonly, I think you hear of like the owl of Minerva, right? But same sort of difference. And where you might attach this idea of wisdom too, right? With owls. So that was number 1, Athena. Number 2, moving to a different part of the world, Kali. So Kali or Mahakali or Valmakali, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can talk about Kali that are going to have somewhat different meanings, to slightly different meanings. But in general, Kali is the goddess of time, death, destruction, and she is terrifying. But that can be a good thing, see, right? So a lot of times in the ancient world, goddesses in particular, say, that might be associated with scary or fearful imagery and whatnot, they are protectors too. So she is really worshipped as the divine mother in many ways. And in the tantric tradition, she's extremely important, whether it's sort of left-hand path or right-hand path forms of tantra. Great imagery surrounding her. Bringing up lots of images here for you. One important story, though, that I think you might see reflected in the art a lot with Kali is when she goes on a rampage, killing. So there's a lot of stories of her having to kill important demons that are effectively impossible for anyone else to kill, because say maybe only a woman can kill a certain demon or whatever. But in this particular story, she's been like rampaging and cannot stop. And basically everyone's terrified that she's going to destroy the whole world at this point, until Shiva tries a variety of means to calm her down, anywhere from like dancing in front of her, distracting her, to crying like a baby, to most famously lying down on his back in front of her. And then when she steps on him, on his chest, there's this moment where, like, of awakening or realization that she's gone too far. And so he's able to like pacify her while at the same time sort of, connecting with her through sort of grace. So that's a pretty common image that you might find. So that's our second one, right? Continuing on, no particular order here. Amaterasu. So going to Japan now. So this is an interesting situation because here we have a goddess who is pretty much the pinnacle of the Shinto religion as like the highest, arguably at least, the most important goddess, but deity, period, right, in the pantheon of gods and goddesses. She is associated with the sun, which is also quite unique. That's often more of a male, right, imagery in other cultures. So that's something unusual. Not unusual, she ends up having a lot of sort of relationships with family members, brothers, that don't go well. So you get that in a lot of different parts of the world, right, in ancient myths. So, all right. I think one other really fascinating piece with Amaterasu is she is directly connected to the Japanese imperial bloodline. Again, this isn't super unusual. Maybe in Egypt or other parts of the world, as you go back on the historical timeline and you move into more of a legendary sort of space, right? You get to a situation where effectively it's like, is this real? Is this mythical? Or what's going on here, right? But that is the tradition, that Amaterasu is sort of the origin point of this imperial bloodline. So that was our third one. Fourth, very important, Ishtar. Now, Ishtar is going to be linked much later with Aphrodite. So similar attributes here: sex, love, war, fertility, basically. And this is such an important goddess because really, when you think about it, when you think about just sort of goddesses in general, those are often like core attributes that will come up, right? With fertility, sex, love, stuff like that. War, though, right, interestingly enough, is brought in. Like we have that with Athena, right, too. Or Kali's certainly out there killing and rampaging and getting stuff accomplished, right? So, Ishtar deserves significant credit. Tries to get with Gilgamesh. That doesn't work. She comes up in countless stories. Probably the most famous is when she descends into the underworld and then returns, which is, of course, referencing kind of this like fertility cycle. But very important story of her descent into the underworld. I mean, we even get that with Jesus and many other figures, right, who are supposedly going to descend into hell or the underworld in some way and come back, right? Whether it's Persephone or whatever, right? There's a lot of these tales, but this is sort of the oldest version of that. She's associated with sacred prostitution, in this like cult of prostitution, which of course isn't super popular in the Bible. You can see how Ishtar or the different variants that are mentioned, but basically the same goddess in the Bible, would be problematic, right? For the Hebrew people, or much later in Christianity, or even within Islam, down the road, So Ishtar slash Aphrodite, very big, important goddess. Um, you know, maybe arguably could be at the top of the list if we were ranking them in from least impact somehow to most. But they're all pretty important that are on this list. The last one, though, that I have on the list for you today is someone that I'm pretty certain you wouldn't expect to be on the list. So we have Nyx, as in night, as in back to Greece, right? This is a primordial goddess, going, predating, if you will, right? The Olympian gods and Titans and all this stuff. So why her? Why is she so important? Well, for one thing, she's night, right? She's like the nighttime. And there's a great story in the Iliad with Homer. So we're talking like, 8th century or something BCE, right? Really far back in ancient Greece, where Nyx is literally at the place where she is so powerful that Zeus himself is terrified to do anything that might piss her off. And one thing he was about to do that was going to piss her off is he was really annoyed with one of her sons, Hypnos. So she has a lot of kids. And what's pretty fascinating here is that some of the kids come, maybe, it depends on the story, whether you're looking at Hesiod's account or someone else, but like some of the kids are going to come from a combination of her and I believe darkness, I think it is, that are going to have a lot of children together. Whereas a lot of her other kids are her own doing by herself without sort of like a male consort. And that's an interesting thing, especially because some of them like are going to be even associated with light. Well, you could see how night or darkness and stuff, right? Those concepts, but nighttime specifically, right, could be linked, right, with its opposite, with light. Think about even like striking flint and something like, two dark things can bring a spark of light, right, into the world. So, very powerful goddess that even the top god, right, of the Olympian sort of pantheon, Zeus, is not prepared to mess with and never would. So, there you have it. Those are our 5 goddesses. Since we have a couple more minutes, I'm going to throw a little bonus in there and get something from Egypt for you. Sekhmet. And I'm going to bring her in only because there's a pretty interesting story that relates back to our Kali account, where Kali's rampaging and everyone's scared that she's going to destroy everything. That almost same sort of thing is happening in a story in Egypt, where Sekhmet, who's this very powerful, fierce goddess, has a bloodlust and is destroying everything. And the sun god Ra needs to mix, I think it's pomegranate juice with beer and trick her, effectively, Sekhmet, into getting drunk. And then like 3 days later, she finally is able, to be fully sort of pacified and calmed down. So pretty interesting, right? All these accounts of these different goddesses that basically the gods are even, right, pretty terrified of. And it takes a major sort of sacrifice or ingenuity on the part of a super high level god, Ra, say, or Shiva, okay, in the Kali situation, to finally calm things down, right? So let me know your thoughts. I mean, this list could have been dramatically extended, of course. Could have easily been a top 10 or 20 or whatever. So I'd love to hear your opinions on which goddess you think is actually the most powerful, maybe the wisest, or even one that's like lesser known that you think's pretty cool that most people haven't heard of. So put that in the comments, and as always, more than happy to reply to anyone who does leave a comment. And feel free to, like and subscribe. Helps the channel. Till next time, stay gray, as I always say.